looking at Kirsten's. Is she at Versailles? What is that?
No, that's Chateau Cheverny
Sure it is.
in France.
Okay. All right. Well, so I just wanted to say a little bit. I've been doing a lot of thinking, of course, about this little ditty here we're going to do. And I guess when I came up with the idea, I mean, I have a lot of wonderful memories and more warm memories of reading and books, and my mother reading and my father reading to us, and I just have all the books all over the house. And then I realized there's probably people who don't have any of those memories, or maybe only bad memories, or you know, self-esteem hitting memories about reading or books or whatever. So I guess I just wanted to acknowledge that, because it's not all just, it's kind of like when we do Mother's Day and we need to say some people don't have good memories of mothers. So anyway, I just wanted to say that up front. And I was kind of going to count how many people came. This is not Lori. Lori is our, what are you? Our emergency, yeah, just in case there's not enough people.
Yeah,
So,
well, I'm your tech host person.
Okay, there's like 7. Is D over here?
There's 8 on my screen.
Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
That's counting Lori.
Yep.
I'm
Yeah.
counting you.
So 7 without
Okay.
me.
It's
Yeah.
early, more may come.
Yeah, so maybe, I don't know if you want me to go first and just sort of do a template of what I thought we would do, or just, why don't I just tell you what I thought we would do? I thought we could say what our book was. I can't wait to see everybody's books. And I know I'm being a nerd about this, but whatever. And then say a little bit about you know, why you picked that book, and what did you learn? What have you learned from that book, maybe, that you've taken with you through your life? If anything, maybe it was just a fun book at the time. And just maybe what your emotional attachment has been to the book. So, and anything else you want to tell us? Okay, I'm gonna go ahead. I'll go ahead, and then whoever wants to can go after me. But I thought of this while I was watching a show on TV about Winnie the Pooh and A.A. Milne or Christopher Robin, or I can't remember what it was called. And I was like, oh, I would just like to be in a group where we just talk about, you know, Winnie the Pooh. Why not? And then I thought about this, and I thought, oh, you know, and then I thought, oh, way more books than Winnie the Pooh that I have memories of. So what I finally chose was A Hole Is to Dig, which is super old because it's as old as I am, by Ruth Krauss, and the pictures are by Maurice Sendak, who's wonderful. Well, they both are. And I distinctly remember having this read to me and then reading it to my younger brothers. And I mean, I can kind of hear how we read it to each other. I mean, just the flow and the pace and what we knew was coming that was going to be, you know, like funny. And anyway, if you're not familiar with this book, it's just basically little kids' statements or definitions of things. So like a principle is to take out splinters, of course. And just arms are for hugging, and a nose is to blow. I mean, you know, stuff like that. The sun is to tell you when it's every day. It's true. So, I don't know. I guess I just feel all warm and mushy inside. I will say that a very close second, if I had it on my shelf, I would have brought it. This is cheating to tell you a second one, but Harold and the Purple Crayon. Again, wah. And so something I wanted to pass on is that something I've discovered, and I'm sure I'm late to the party, but you can go on YouTube and you can have that book read to you, or any book, apparently read to you like your bedtime story, and or just if you're feeling anxious or whatever. I do a lot. So you just it's just I couldn't believe it when I when I watched, you know, the pages go by and somebody reading Harold and the Purple. Oh my God, it made me so happy. So nerd that I am, that's me, Polis today. And who would like to be next, Diane or Kirsten? Whoa,
Look
Kirsten's
what
face.
Melinda's got, actually.
Look what I just ran into reach and grab.
Oh,
I'm sorry, my background keeps wanting to make it go away.
I love him.
We just,
He
yeah.
What?
I said,
drew up a chair and sat at the table.
yeah.
Okay.
Well, we just went through my younger son's room and we're clearing out and putting things in. I have a basket of children's books that he's no longer particularly attached to that happens to be sitting right next to me right now.
Funny.
And this one was on top. So I just think it's funny that I have this one, which is not one of the ones that I would suggest for this group for myself, but it's
Okay.
so I think that's funny. And I don't have any of the books that I would suggest for myself because they're either packed away or not where I get to them easily or whatever. So I'm just talking about them from memory, but somebody else can go before me. That's fine. I just had to share that I have this just handy.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Makes me sad just to look at it. Or happy. Happy.
I can go if you want.
Next.
Do you-
Okay.
So
Okay.
this was a hard choice because I had to decide, am I picking a book from my own childhood, a book from my kids' childhoods, or a book from my many years of being a preschool teacher, because I have so many favorite children's books. And I was looking for my copy of the Harold and the Purple Crayon because I have the one that I got when I was a little kid, but it's not, there were several of those books and it's not the first one in the series. It's a little bit later and I don't know what happened to it because I can't find it. So that was disappointing. But the one I brought, I don't know if you're gonna be able to see this. Nope, you aren't gonna be able to. I have to, maybe I have to, oh, maybe, let's see if I'm, no, won't work. I'm not gonna show you the mess behind me so you don't get to see the book. It's called, The Little Red Lighthouse and the Great Gray Bridge. And this is a book, it's about, does anyone familiar with this book? Okay. It's about a little lighthouse that was built in the Hudson River, not in the river, but along the banks of the river by New York City, northern Manhattan. And it tells a story about when they came in and built this big, huge gray bridge over it, which would be the George Washington Bridge. And then they were going to tear down the lighthouse, but the people of the community did not want that to happen. So they had this big sort of community uprising or whatever, and they saved the lighthouse. So the lighthouse is still there. And this book was, my sister had this book as a child, but we both thought it was ours because we used to love having this book read to us. And at some point, I don't know when, I don't know if we came across the physical book at my parents' house or whatever it was. All I know is we had this big fight about whose it was and she won. So I had to immediately go buy the book myself. So I would have my own copy of The Little Red Lighthouse and the Great Gray Bridge. But anyway, there's another story along with this. My brother lives in the Washington Heights area of Manhattan, which is just north of the George Washington Bridge. And for a while, he lived in an apartment that he had a beautiful view of the bridge. But one time we were visiting, this is, I don't know how many years ago, but quite a while ago, we were visiting him. And I said, is that lighthouse still there? Can we go see that lighthouse? And he goes, what are you talking about? Apparently, this book was a real favorite of my sister and me, but my brothers knew nothing about this lighthouse, which I don't understand. But all I know is he had no idea what I was talking about. And I said, no, it's here. It's right down there. We just need to go walk down there and find this lighthouse.
It's real.
It is real. I knew it was real. So here's the funny thing. He's arguing. We went together. I mean, I don't know who all was with us, my family, whatever. We're walking down there. Oh, and I do know what year it is. I'll tell you that in a second. We're walking down and I started to see there were these red lighthouses painted on the sidewalk. It was like a path to lead you to how to get to this lighthouse. And it cracked me up because here we are in his neighborhood. He never noticed the red lighthouses on the sidewalk. I think it's And almost the whole way there, he thought that I was totally wrong. Well, anyway, this actually was, I believe, the summer after 2001. So everything was tight security everywhere, and especially around a major bridge in Manhattan as the George Washington Bridge. So we started to go down to this lighthouse, and we found it. You know, you go through a little park, you find the lighthouse, and the bridge is right over the top of it. And I started pulling out my camera and running toward the lighthouse, and this security guard comes running out of this.
Oh.
No, stop, put the cameras away. So my husband had to go sweet talk the guy and tell him I'm a lighthouse fanatic, because I am. We've done lots of lighthouses. And this particular lighthouse was very important to me, and all I wanted to do was take pictures.
God.
So I was allowed to go take pictures. So we have a number of pictures of our family there at the little red lighthouse. And I've been there since then as well. Kind of became a thing to do whenever I visited my brother after that. But anyway, that's my story. Trying to think what else about this. I don't know why it's so special. I guess just the underdog of that lighthouse, that, you know, here's this little lighthouse and here's this great gray bridge, and they're going to tear it down because it was now useless, because they didn't need the lights from this lighthouse
You
anymore.
see it?
And then, what's that?
Look at D, I got the picture.
What?
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh.
That's it. Uh-huh.
I just put red lighthouse and up it came.
Yeah, there's a whole thing about this lighthouse. I mean, there's like this whole society that does these. Yeah, it's a big deal. This lighthouse is a big deal, and here my brother lived a block away from it. Had no idea it was there. Well, it was a little more than a block.
Kirsten, did you ever read that book to kids at school or your
Oh,
kids?
yeah. Oh, see, because I am somewhat of a lighthouse fanatic, we always, well, not always, oftentimes we would do some sort of lighthouse type theme or something that would relate to some reason that I just had to read my lighthouse books to the kids. Yes.
Sneak it in. Okay.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. One of my favorites. So I guess, oh, and then at some point later, my sister gave me a framed picture of it as well. So, and I have little lighthouses of it. This, yeah, okay, that's more than you want to know about me. Someone else can go now.
Next. Anybody? And did you guys, or did you mean me? Can she hear me? Okay.
I mean, she should. Anne, can you hear?
Yeah, I can hear. I don't have my
Oh.
book,
Oh. Well, you don't have to talk.
but I don't think this, I think, oh, okay. I
Do
won't.
Well, do you have a book that you just wanted to talk about? You don't have to have it in your
Yeah.
hand.
See,
Yeah.
here's my book that you couldn't see that I didn't show you. So, I mean.
Oh, okay. There
Besides,
you
then
go.
Dee will look it up and she will find a postcard about it.
Yeah, there you go.
So we can look at it. So tell us about your
Well,
book.
I don't think this wasn't one of mine, but I don't know why. Oh, it's just popped to my mind when Kirsten was talking that Make Way for Ducklings was a popular one to read to the kids. I really enjoyed that. And then when we were in Boston, you know, one time we looked up the place and everything, but nothing deep and spiritual about it. It just was a fun book to read.
Definitely. One of my favorites too. Next.
Oh, I can talk about something. This is D. Am I on? Okay. I was trying to think of a book, and I really don't remember a real favorite book when I was really young, but I don't remember my mother reading to me a lot. I think maybe because there's about 4 years between me and my sister, but then there were 3 right in a row. So she was so busy, but she would always sing, and we did a lot of choruses from church, you know, the ones we used to sing. I think I remember her doing a lot of nursery rhymes. I think I did have a
Oh,
book of
yeah.
nursery rhymes, and you know, kids just mimic everything so easy. And I would learn all the nursery rhymes. And then when I was a little older, starting school, I was reading to my sisters. I don't remember having a lot of books, but we did have a few. And I think the singing and the learning through the rhymes were
Mm-hmm.
what I remember the most.
Yep.
My children, I know my son really liked the Dr. Seuss book, Who is My Mother? And it goes on and on about all the different animals and the babies, and he's looking for his mother. And in the end, he gets together. But it was, every page was like, it was about, you know, chickens or cows or whatever animals, and then they would just, this little one is looking for his mother. So
Just
I
wanted to
don't
say
know if
that
he felt insecure or what, because I was divorced before he was 2.
but the book is actually called Are You My Mother? And it's not by Dr. Seuss. It's by somebody Eastman. I'd have to look
Oh,
it up.
Eastman, that's right.
Yeah, yeah.
It was sort of like that though, because it had the
Eastman,
rhymes.
yeah.
E.D.
Yeah.
Eastman, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I remember that now. I don't have copies,
Yeah.
so can't really look at them.
I feel like I can see it in my
Yeah.
mind's eye.
Yeah,
you
now
know.
that you say it, I remember that.
Yeah.
E.D. Eastman. So that was one. And I have some more for later when I'm like up to junior high, but we'll go with let somebody else tell about their memories.
Well, if nobody else wants to go, I can go. I can talk for days about books. And oh, that's me. So when I was thinking about this, I kept thinking about books I liked at different times in my childhood, because I didn't have the same book all the time. Because as I aged, I changed my interests and things, and different books would come up. But what I remember, I don't have a very large recollection of my parents reading to me, because I read fairly early for myself. I learned how to read fairly early, and I just don't think that I have a good memory of it, because I was so young that I started reading for myself. And so, but I do remember that my dad read Mike Mulligan and his Steam Shovel to me.
Oh, yes.
Because
yes.
he liked that book. It wasn't that it was so much my favorite book, but he loved that book. And when he would read to me, that was one that he often chose to read because he liked that book. And I have an affinity for that book now because of him reading that to me. And then when I got into school, like I said, I read fairly early. So by the time that I got into school, I discovered Nancy Drew books in kindergarten and first grade. And I decided that I was going to read. There were in the school library where I was, they had all the Nancy Drew books, the Hardy Boys books on one separate shelf all by themselves. And all of these yellow-backed books were all this big, long line of them in the shelf. I decided I was going to read all of them by the time I was in 6th grade, because my thought was when I was finished in that school, I wanted to have read those books. So I had a lot of Nancy Drew books when I was in early elementary. And I think that I had an affinity for them because it was a female protagonist. And they were always the 3 of them, Nancy and Joe and Beth, or Beth, whatever they are, yeah. They were the ones that sort of were in charge. Their boyfriends always showed up in the books, but they did what they wanted, the girls wanted them to do. They weren't the boss of the girls. The girls told them what to do.
Yeah.
I always thought that was, I don't know, I think I was too young to realize that was different, but it was different because there was a lot of books in that time that didn't have a female protagonist in such a thing as being, a detective. So I liked those. And then when I got a little older, actually, my mom was very disappointed because I didn't actually read all of the Nancy Drew books by the time I was in 6th grade. We moved and I wasn't at that school anymore. And about the time I was in 5th grade, I was getting really close to have finished them, and they came out with a whole bunch more. think that made me like, oh, okay, fine. I'm going to finish all of the 6th grade. So I had just kind of moved on from that. So she was very disappointed I didn't finish. I read almost all of ones that were out at the time. I read almost all of them. And then in my upper elementary years, I stumbled across Madeline L'Engle and A Wrinkle in Time in the series of Wrinkle in Time books. And those are still my favorite books today. Those are my very favorite books of all time, I think. And Madeline L'Engle is definitely my favorite author. I have read some of her adult books, and I have my favorite book is also one of hers as an adult as well. And then I was, thinking about my sons and the books that they liked when they were children. And we shopped a lot. My husband and I, when we had kids, it was a long journey for us to have kids. We wanted to spoil them terribly, and we had to decide, I told my husband, we had to decide what we were going to be okay with spoiling them with, because we couldn't spoil them with everything, and that would just be crazy. So we decided that books were an okay thing to spoil them with. And we would go, the thrift store in the community where we lived, they would have half-price days on federal holidays. So, those odd federal holidays, like, the ones with things like Columbus Day and President's Day and whatever, when not necessarily schools are closed, those would be 50% off days. And we would go and shop on those days. And I always let the kids pick out books when we were at the thrift store. And my son picked out a book when he was little, before his brother was born, and it was called No More Elephants. And I don't know if this is a book that has been popular. I wasn't aware of it. I'd never seen it before. And he adored this book. And I read it so many times. And I actually just looked it up on the internet. I have a picture of it here. I think I do, if I can find it. I'll see if I can share it. See if I can share my screen. I don't do that often, so I don't know if that's something that's easy for me to do. But
Wait just a second. I need to give you permission. I need to give you
I have
permission.
that permission.
Here, I can do that.
Okay.
I have control.
He's
Okay.
the host.
All right. I think you can do it now. Try.
Yep, that's the one I want to share. And so this is what it looks like, but no elephants. And basically, Grandma Tildy lives alone until the traveling pet salesman stops by her house to try and sell her a pet. And he has all kinds of pets with him. She says that she's fine with whatever pet, but no elephants. And so he keeps coming by and coming by and coming by, and eventually she's got all the pets except for the elephant. And the traveling pet salesman has to go south for the winter and can't take the elephant with him. And so she convinces Grandma Tildy that to leave the elephant with her. And she's like, okay, but he can't come in the house. And then of course it snows, so she lets him in the house, and he breaks through the floor, and then he eats all the food, and all these things happen because she takes in the elephant. And so she decides that they have to move or else they'll all die. So the elephant just stands up and walks her house, inside her house. He just stands up and walks with her house inside her house to, I forget, somewhere. It was somewhere warm. I can't remember now if it's Florida or wherever. Anyway, and they create a resort for pets. And so they live in the warm weather, and they all have enough food, and everybody's together, and they have all kinds of other pets.
Oh,
Horrible.
it's heaven.
My son
There you
loves
go.
pumpkin. Huh? I'm sorry.
It's like the Ark.
Yeah.
Yes, it was like the Ark. She had canary, and it was all kinds of pets that she had. I'll see if I can remember what it all says.
Uh-huh.
No, it doesn't tell me. But yeah, so we read that. And then my other son also enjoyed this book, but my younger son was all about Dr. Seuss. We have so many Dr. Seuss books. He was obsessed with Dr. Seuss books. Loved all of the Dr. Seuss stories. And I think his favorite was the Circus Circus. He liked the Circus Circus, which is one that is not If I Ran the Zoo. Maybe it was If I Ran the Zoo. Whichever one had the Circus Circus. He loved that. But my husband and I, the story about that is my husband and I had this book, and I think the circus, you know, the one about the zoo, the circus, that, I think it was If I Ran the Circus. But anyway, it was terribly long. It was so long, and it was so dreadful to read him. And he found out that I was skipping pages. I would turn to
Naughty mom.
But my son didn't know, because I always turned the same 2 pages. And so when he found that out, it's like, oh, that's so cheating. So then when he decided he skipped pages too, but he didn't skip the same pages, and my son figured it out. And so we couldn't skip pages on that one anymore, because Daddy didn't do it right.
Wow.
Then we were both in trouble. But and the other one is that we called it One Fish, Two Fish, Red Fish, Infinity Fish.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It seemed forever to read as well. So those are the things that I thought about when we were talking about childhood books. Those I have to say were my favorite, which is, I've talked a long time. I need to let somebody else know.
Thank you. Welcome, Millie.
Thank you. Sorry. A little late.
That's fine. Diane, you want to take it
Sure.
from?
I'm still debating. I've got 3 sitting in front of me.
Well, we have time for all of them.
This was my childhood favorite. And I particularly
Well,
remember Where the Wild Things Are. I particularly remember my grandmother, the first grade teacher, reading this to us. So, but the one that I have to share, this is a new book. I don't know if anybody else knows this. This is a 2018 book. It's called We Don't Eat Our Classmates. And it's about Penelope Rex, the dinosaur who goes to kindergarten, and her classmates look so delicious that she eats them, and the teacher tells her to spit them out. And it's a cute story about learning the rules of school, but it's, it's the dinosaur eating her
We
classmates.
don't
So
eat our classmates.
that's my new current favorite.
That's a new
It's
rule.
by Ryan T. Higgins. It's called We Don't Eat Our Classmates. If anybody's got little kids, it's a great one.
Yeah, one of the things I was thinking is all the books that I remember. I mean, they're all like a bazillion years old, and you're in a position where you
teach this stuff, so
yeah,
I see a lot.
Yeah, so that's because I don't have any grandchildren, which is fine. So I don't have any new books. I thought you said you had 3 books.
I do have 3. My third one is a young adult one. I don't know how many of you know Catherine Patterson, who wrote Bridge to Terabithia.
I love that book too.
This was my more favorite one, though. Jacob Have I Loved. And it's a story of twins that were, the family always kind of loved the one twin more and highlighted her, and it's told from the perspective of the other twin, who's always the one who's kind of in second place, and just kind of a complex story of family relationships. It's set in like on an island in Maryland, like kind of secluded kind of island.
Coast or something.
Just one of my favorites. One of those books I've read hundreds of times, probably since I was a young adult. I could have picked 20 more, but those were the 3 I came up with.
I know. Me too.
I've got a shelf behind me full of children's books.
And every time somebody mentions ones, it makes me remember one that I loved.
And Melinda, One Fish, Two Fish, Red Fish, Blue Fish is my favorite Dr. Seuss.
Oh, well, I'm sorry.
It's okay. No, I love it.
Dr. Seuss too, but that book actually wears on you after a while.
It's long. It is long.
Mr. Brown can move because I would make all the noises.
Kathy, I could go next if you want.
Yeah, please. I'm taking notes.
You're taking votes?
Notes. I just keeping track of everybody's. So watch out.
Having just moved and gone through all of your books, I had a book that showed up on the shelf that I said to my husband, well, I have to keep that because that was one of my favorites from childhood.
Aw.
And I think it's called The Little Snowman. I should have gone and gotten it. It's a very small little book, and it's about Eskimos. And it's the book that I first realized there were people other than that looked different than we did, you know. And growing up in the Midwest, we didn't have a lot of diversity. And so that book it's very old, and it must have been one of my aunts. My mother's cousin, actually, but we called her an aunt, had left all of her books with us when they moved to Arizona. It was in a bushel basket upstairs, and I used to go up in the attic and pick out books that I wanted to read out of that basket. And this was one of them from childhood. But now I was over 5 by the time that happened. Mother read to us. We had those compilations of Bible stories. Remember? Do any of you remember that? It was like an encyclopedia. It had all the Bible stories in it. So those were popular. 250 or something. I wish I still had them. That I don't have those. I was before the Seuss books, but I've sure enjoyed them since, especially when they've been read for children's services at church. They've been really neat. I was trying to think. I had one other one yes. I had a great aunt who sent books to all of her great nieces and nephews every Christmas. And she sent me one year Winnie the Pooh. No, I'm sorry, not Winnie the Pooh. I was remembering that one too. She sent me The Wind in the Willows.
Oh, yes.
Another great one.
And I read that and I said, I don't like this book. Animals are talking. I grew up on a farm, so animals talking was not.
Oh,
But
bother.
eventually, got to read that.
I love that book.
Well, everybody does.
Talking animal. Oh,
Animals
funny.
don't talk, I said.
Well, I love that your great aunt sent books at Christmas to everybody. That's great.
Isn't that wonderful? I
Yeah.
have tried very hard to stick with that especially when children were young. Beatrice Potter books, I've sent the whole collection to all of my nieces and nephews. I don't have that many. I don't have as many as she did. She was from my grandfather's family. There were, 9 or 10 of them. So,
Yikes.
so there are lots of great nieces and nephews. But she taught art, and so that was, she was a teacher. So books were
Yeah.
a thing. But she lived in California, so it was a long ways to ship books too. I guess though, postal rates for books is less than, I don't know whether it still is or not, but it was.
Media mail. Book rate,
mail.
right?
Media
Book
mail.
rate.
It's media mail
Yeah,
now.
that's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
Well, I told you more than I
Well,
thought I was going to.
well, that's good.
I
like it.
Should have brought the little book though, because I could have read the whole thing to you in the time I was talking.
It was a very little book.
Yes, very small little book. But very beautiful.
Millie, I think, is maybe
Oh,
most-
yeah.
you came in. and you didn't hear everybody, but
I didn't hear everybody. I'm sorry. I
it's
fell
your
asleep.
turn.
Well, the one I love Dr. Seuss. Absolutely love Dr. Seuss. Even when I was little, some of my favorite memories are I can still hear my dad reading books in my head. I can hear him reading The Grinch That Stole Christmas. But the Lorax was probably my favorite. And I looked and looked and I could not find our copy of the Lorax, and I'm wondering if one of the kids has it. So I grabbed my second favorite one that my dad used to read to us. I had trouble in getting to Sala Saloo, and it's one that not a lot of people know. But oh my goodness, I love this book. And it's like this person has all these troubles. This little guy, I mean, I don't know what you want to call him. The guy has he has troubles, and he's always getting stung. He lives in the Valley of Vung, and he stubs his toe on a rock and falls, and then he's watching out for rocks, and he ends up getting bitten on the tail by a Quilligan quail, and so then he's trying to put one eye forward and one eye backwards, and so then he gets stung by a scritch at his neck and a skink at his toe. So he's got all these troubles and he doesn't know what to do and where to go. And this guy comes along and says, I'm off to the city of Sala Saloo on the banks of the beautiful river Wahoo, where they never have troubles, at least very few. And then their whole journey, they keep running into all these troubles, and they're like, oh, when we get to Sala Saloo, this is all going to be over and everything's going to be great because they never have trouble. And they finally get to Sala Saloo, where they never have troubles, at least very few, and they have a problem. And it's that there's only one door to Sala Saloo, and they have a key slapping slippered. We do. So they can't unlock the door to Sala Saloo. And so the guy that he's been traveling with all along says, the doorman of Sala Saloo says, I'm telling you what I'm going to do. I'm leaving, he said, leaving Sala Saloo on the banks of the beautiful river Wahoo, where we never have troubles, at least very few. And I'm off to the city of Bulu Bubal on the banks of the beautiful river Wu Wall, where they never have troubles, no troubles at all. Come along with me, he said as he ran, and you'll never have any more troubles, young man. And he's just like, are you kidding? We finally got here after all these troubles. And so he finally decides, he started to go, but I didn't. Instead, I did some quick thinking inside of my head. And then he decides that he's going to go home. He started back home to the Valley of Vung. I know I'll have troubles. I'll maybe get stung. I'll always have troubles. I'll maybe get bit by that green-headed quail in the place where I sit. But I've bought a big bat. I'm already used.
Oh, no.
Now my troubles are going to have trouble with me.
Ooh.
So, and it's just funny because we were always, we always used Sala Saloo as like, you never have troubles, at least very few. And
At least very few.
Exactly. And so, I mean, we ended up like, when you buy a used car, you're always going to end up with troubles. But, and we always had cars that were falling apart when I was a kid. But my parents were always like, well, you don't want to buy a new car because then you're going to end up getting someone else's troubles. At least stick with the trouble instead of getting a new used car from somebody and finding out that that's got all kinds of problems too. At least this one, what it is. So I also wanted to tell you about one of the kids' favorite books that we shared with them, and it's I Love You, Stinky Face. It's so cool. And it's all about how moms love their kids and, they always love you no matter what. And the little boy says, well, what if I was a giant T-Rex and I tried to eat you? And she said, well, I would feed you all the yummy things you could want, and you wouldn't eat me, and I would tell you stories, and of course I would still love you. And eventually he says, but mama, what if I were a super smelly skunk and I smelled so bad that my name was Stinky Face? And she says, well, I would still love you. I'd give you a bath with all the sweetest smelling perfumes, and I'd still love you. And even if you still stank, I would still read you stories, and we would still snuggle. And, you know, I'd wear a clothespin on my nose if I had to. And so it's just a really sweet book. That's the one that I usually try to give people when they, people that I know when they have a baby. I give them I love you, Stinky Face. So, but the Lorax, for years, my husband's signature thing on his email was, unless someone like you cares a whole awful lot, things are never going to get better. They're not. And that's from the Lorax. So, because we just love that book. Both of us always did. And I didn't like the new Disney movie of it, but there's an old Disney animated version that's basically reading the book. That one I really liked, so we would play that for our kids a lot too. So, but I love children's books. I mean, I was licensed in special education in Wisconsin, and I never had like a full-time contract of my own, but the best was books. It's all about books, especially for first, second, third graders. And I loved our kids' librarian at the school. She called picture books. She didn't call them picture books. She called them everybody books. So that she never made
She
the
calls
kids feel
them what?
everybody books.
Everybody books.
Everybody
I like
books.
that.
So because they're for everybody, they're not just for, because a lot of people are like, oh,
Oh, those are
I'm too
baby
big
books.
for those.
Yeah.
Those are baby books. And she's
Yeah.
like, no, those are everybody books. And we would
Hey, Millie.
always go to story time. Yeah.
Somebody came into the room that hasn't had a chance to talk yet, and I'm looking at the time, so
No problem.
sorry. Okay, Carol.
I'm here. Books very much.
Okay.
I say to adults that children may not pick up on right away.
Right.
The Richard Scarry books are one of that kind.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Is that your favorite?
It was my husband's favorite. He enjoyed reading that to our daughter.
Do you have books from when you were little?
Just one that I really enjoyed was the bird book, in which all of the birds had names and they carried on conversations and, and you learned about them.
So I think everybody's had a chance to say something.
What did Lori like?
Oh, except
So I
Lori,
didn't-
you were gonna go. Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to sneak off at some point to go get the children's book, but I was so interested in what y'all were saying, I couldn't.
I know.
My mother was she was a librarian, and she started her first part of being a librarian was at the university. I graduated from the University of Southern Mississippi, and she was the children's book coordinator and started the Lena Day Grumman book collection, which there's a big festival at the University of Southern Mississippi every year around children's books from around the world. So I got to meet children's book authors from around the world and have a collection of children's books that my mom would, have the author come in for the festival and get to meet the person. And there's a woman named Lois Linsky who wrote children's books.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, no, Lois Linsky? Okay. I have an egg that like
Oh, yes.
the insides of the egg are out. I have an egg that she drew a face on for me. So I have these incredible gifts from children's books. But the one book that, like, I love The Wind in the Willows, you know, I mean, Charlotte's Web, you name it. There's all these incredible books.
yes.
But the book that probably shaped my life the most was called The Silly Book. Have y'all ever read The Silly Book? Well, let's see, how much time do we have? Do y'all want to talk for a minute and I'll go get The Silly Book and I'll be back.
Well, I have something I can say real quickly while she's going to get The Silly Book, if that's okay.
Yeah.
I was just going to say another book that I have special memories of is The Little Prince. The reason being that when I was an exchange student in Brazil, somebody decided that I would learn the language better if I started reading children's books. So we went off and bought a bunch of, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Joan Walsh England, who is a author. I had a bunch of her books in Portuguese, but the one that I really had to get, they told me, was O Pequeno Príncipe, The Little Prince. So I have that in Portuguese. Well, then somewhere along the line, I found it somewhere in French. So I bought that. So now I have Le Petit Prince. And then I thought, okay, now I have to get it in English because I didn't have it in English yet. And then I decided that when I was trying to learn Italian and we were in Italy, I had to buy Il Piccolo Principe. So now I have that. So my Italian son-in-law decided one year that I needed a Little Prince calendar, and it's in French, and it's The Little Prince, but it's not every month. It's like every 2 weeks you get a new page out of the book that's in illustrations, and it's really cool. So I have it. I mean, it's like, I don't know how many years old, but it's still on my wall. Because I love it.
Definitely. Once I was in New York, and Amy and I went to I can't remember which museum it was, a smaller museum, and it had a whole Le Petit Prince exhibit, and all about how he wrote it and his background. Can't remember his name right now. And it was Saint-Exupéry, and it was just fascinating, and lots of sort of like initial drawings that, you know, mimic what eventually got into the book. Anyways, very cool.
So I'm back. I just wanted to show you two other books that were from my mom, the collection. The Village Tree. Have y'all read this by Taro Yashima? It starts out, do you know a country far, far to the east that we call Japan? Do you know? There too, we have many children like you. So I started out at a very young age being told that, you know, there was a little bit wider world than Hattiesburg, Mississippi. Thank God I was told that. And then Esfer Slobodinka. Have you heard of Esfer Slobodinka? Did Pezzo the Peddler and the Circus Elephant. Sorry, I'm not showing you. The first book
I the hats and the trees and
yes,
Oh,
yes,
that's
yes.
one.
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, and then so I have this beautiful note written to me by this author in this book from when I was a kid. Wrote it February 3rd, 1969. Says this was the copy I was going to use for marking up sketches for the mural. He did a mural of this at the university. So I picked out one that was a little spoiled by wrong inscription, but I don't think you'd mind that too much. Anyway, this is all I have left until I come back, I hope, in March. It was nice meeting you. See you again. Regards, Esfer Slobodinka. So yeah, so I grew up in the world of children's books. So here's the Silly Book. And the reason that I hesitate in sharing this is because y'all were talking about books that are life-changing and deep and really good. And the Silly Book is nothing more than a silly book. But my parents and my siblings would read this to me all the time. And so I like had the book memorized. So like there's a silly song called Boodleheimer, Boodleheimer, clap, 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 Boodleheimer, Boodleheimer, clap, clap, clap. The more you boodle, the less you heimer, the more you heimer, the less you boodle, Boodleheimer, Boodleheimer, clap, clap, clap. And I'm so embarrassed to say that this book shaped my life, but it did. I mean, it shaped my sense of humor. You know, it talks about silly people and silly stories and you know, silly questions. If people get chicken pox, what did chickens get? People pox, right? I mean, just things that, yeah. So it totally shaped my sense of humor. It's by Stu Hampel, and I gave it to our grandchildren when they're born. They get a silly, they got a silly book. So there you go. It's kind of embarrassing.
Okay,
It's not
so
embarrassing. It's wonderful.
show me that Espir Slobodkin. Show me that again, because yeah. So what
The
I
hat.
remember is caps for sale.
Caps for sale, yep.
Yep,
Yeah,
and that's
it's
the
caps
one
for
I
sale.
remember.
Mhm.
50 cents a cap.
Yep.
And it's the same author, so
Oh, yeah.
how interesting.
Right.
He's into peddlers.
Yeah. So she was, she's Russian, Esper Slobodinka, and see, here's the caps for sale. Can you see it? Caps for sale, caps for sale.
Caps for sale, yep.
50
Oh, I
cents
love
a
that
cap.
book.
Right. So I don't know if the book changed names
Yeah, right.
or if this
That's
was
what I
the
was.
original title. I don't know.
Right,
Yeah,
right,
she
right,
may have
right.
changed, the name may have changed, so I don't know.
But we sure like that
Wow.
one. Yeah.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Me too.
I think the word peddler is so funny.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Isn't it? It's a fun
And I'm sure it's
word.
from that. I'm sure it's from that book. I just,
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh well. Oh my gosh. Well, you guys, it's 1:56, which means it's almost time for what was 2 o'clock?
I don't remember.
Oh,
2 o'clock is the book study, I
oh,
think.
it's time for Millie's husband's book.
Yeah,
Oh,
right.
that's right. That's right.
I told him last night, he was like, what?
What was up with that? That was so weird.
We
Anyway,
can't
so
wait to
there's
meet him. We want him to autograph all of our copies.
Yeah, sure. He'll spell his own name wrong, is what'll happen. Because
yeah, right. Well, thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Kathy.
This
You
was
did a
very
great job.
You
This was great. Thanks for doing this.
Yeah, you.
Thank
Hey.
you.
4 more books I have to share with you guys.
Only 4?
No, probably more than that, but at least 4.
Well,
exactly.
I got reminded of so many. So thank you,
Oh,
thank
I
you,
know.
thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Yeah.
everybody.
All right. See you later. Okay.